Commander Vexistar stood in the command center of his massive warship. The lights from dozens of screens painted his green-scaled face in shifting colors of blue and red. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. They had done this many times before. For 300 years, Vexistar had fought wars across the galaxy. He had seen civilizations rise and fall. He had watched proud species bow down before the might of the hegemony empire. Today would be no different. The human worlds appeared on his main display as small red dots scattered across several star systems. They looked so tiny and weak compared to the massive hegemony fleet that surrounded them. Vextar allowed himself a small smile. This would be over quickly. "Sir," called Sub-Commander Kolnith from his position near the communication array, "the human delegation is requesting to speak with you." Vextar walked slowly to the communication station. His heavy boots clicked against the metal floor. "Put them through." The screen flickered and showed a human face. The creature looked soft and pink with small eyes and no natural armor. It was a female with dark hair tied back neatly. She spoke in the common galactic language. "I am Ambassador Youngsu Lee representing the United Earth Colonies. We wish to discuss the terms of your demands." Vextar studied the human carefully. Like all members of her species, she seemed fragile. No claws, no fangs, no protective scales or thick hide. Her people had only recently developed space travel. Their technology was hundreds of years behind the great galactic powers. "There are no terms to discuss," Vextar replied in his deep voice. "Your colonies are in violation of hegemony space. You will evacuate all settlements within 10 standard days. Any resistance will be met with force." The human ambassador's face remained calm, but something changed in her eyes. "Commander, our people have lived on these worlds for generations. These are our homes. We cannot simply abandon them." "Then you will die defending them," Vextar said without emotion. "Your choice is simple. Leave or be removed." The human was quiet for a long moment. Around her, other humans moved back and forth. They seemed to be preparing something. Finally, she spoke again. "Commander Vextar, I need you to understand something about humanity. We have a saying on our world. It goes like this: you can have peace or you can have war, but you cannot have both. We choose war." The communication ended. Vextar stared at the blank screen for several seconds. Behind him, his officers exchanged glances. Sub-Commander Kolnith approached carefully. "Sir, should we begin the assault?" Vexistar walked back to his command chair. It was made from the bones of some long-dead creature from his homeworld. He had sat in this chair during 47 different campaigns. He had conquered species with natural weapons that could cut through steel. He had defeated civilizations with technology that could bend space and time. What could these soft, weak humans possibly do against the might of the hegemony fleet? "Begin with the outer colonies," he ordered. "Make it clean and fast. I want to be done with this business before the next cycle." The hegemony war fleet moved forward like a great metal beast, 50 massive ships filled with weapons that could crack planets. Each vessel carried enough firepower to destroy entire cities. The humans had nothing that could match them. The first human colony was called New Busan. It orbited a small yellow star and held about 2 million people. The planet had basic defensive platforms, but nothing that could threaten a hegemony dreadnought. "Target their military installations," Vextar commanded. "Minimal civilian casualties. We want them to surrender, not become martyrs." The attack began exactly as planned. Hegemony plasma cannons reached out across space and touched the human defensive satellites. They exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The colony's small fleet of patrol ships tried to fight back, but their weapons bounced harmlessly off hegemony shields. Within 6 hours, New Busan had fallen. The surviving humans sent out surrender signals and prepared for evacuation. Everything was going according to plan. The second target was New Seoul, a mining world with 3 million inhabitants. Again, the human defenses crumbled quickly. Their ships were fast but lightly armed. Their weapons seemed designed for hunting pirates, not fighting a real military force. But something strange happened during the second attack. Instead of surrendering, immediately like the first colony, the humans fought longer than they should have. Even when their situation was hopeless, small groups of human ships kept attacking. They rammed themselves into hegemony vessels, causing damage but destroying themselves in the process. "Why are they doing that?" asked Kolnath, watching a human cargo ship crash into the side of a hegemony cruiser. Both ships exploded together. "Desperation," Vextar replied, but privately, he was not so sure. The human attacks seemed planned, not desperate. They were trading their lives for damage in a way that made no tactical sense. The refugees from both colonies did something else that puzzled him. Instead of scattering in all directions like most defeated species, they were regrouping. Their emergency communications were not filled with panic and fear. Instead, they carried detailed reports about hegemony ship movements, weapon capabilities, and tactical formations. The humans were not just running away, they were gathering intelligence. "Sir," reported the intelligence officer, "we are receiving unusual transmissions from the human home system. Their industrial output has increased by 300% in the past week." "What are they building?" Vextar asked. "Unknown, sir. But whatever it is, they are building a lot of it." That night, as the hegemony fleet moved toward the third human colony, Vextar studied the tactical reports in his private quarters. The room was decorated with trophies from his many victories, weapons taken from defeated enemies, flags from conquered worlds, pieces of destroyed warships. But the humans bothered him in a way that no enemy had for decades. Their technology was inferior, their ships were smaller, their weapons were weaker. By every measure of military power, they should have been crushed, easily. So why did he feel like something was wrong? The answer came in the form of an intercepted human transmission. It was a message being broadcast from Earth to all the human colonies. A human military leader was speaking to his people. "Citizens of Earth and all human worlds," the voice said. "Today the hegemony empire attacked our colonies. They believe we are weak because we are young. They believe we will surrender because we are outnumbered. They are wrong." Vextar listened carefully to the translation. The human voice was calm but filled with something he recognized from his own species' history, the sound of a predator preparing to hunt. "We will not evacuate our homes. We will not bow to those who think they can take what is ours. They have shown us what they call war. Now we will show them what humans call war. And when this is over, the galaxy will understand that humanity is not prey. We are the hunters." The transmission ended. In the silence of his quarters, surrounded by the trophies of 3 centuries of conquest, Commander Vextar felt something he had not experienced in many years. For the first time since he was a young soldier, he wondered if he had made a mistake. The humans had accepted his challenge. Now he would discover what they meant by war. Captain Dae-Hyun Park stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching his crew prepare for battle. The ship was humanity's newest warship, built in the orbital yards above Earth in record time. Every person on board knew what they were fighting for. News of the fallen colonies had reached Earth 3 days ago. "Captain," called Lieutenant Bo-Ra Kim from her station, "we have the enemy fleet on long-range sensors, 37 ships including 2 dreadnoughts. They are moving toward New Biu." "Incheon Colony," Park nodded grimly. New Incheon held 4 million people, including his own sister and her family. The evacuation ships could only carry half the population before the hegemony fleet arrived. Someone had to buy them time. "How long until we intercept?" he asked. 18 hours at maximum burn," replied his navigator. "Signal the fleet. All ships prepare for combat acceleration." Around the Defiance, 23 other human warships moved into formation. They were not as large as hegemony vessels, but they were fast and carried weapons that no alien race had ever seen before. Weapons designed by humans who understood that sometimes the best defense was overwhelming attack. Senior Chief Tae-Ho Lee worked at the weapons console, running final checks on their main armament. "Captain, the railgun arrays are charged and ready. Kinetic penetrators loaded. We have enough ammunition for extended engagement." Park studied the tactical display. The human fleet was outnumbered almost 2 to 1, But numbers had never stopped humanity before. During the old wars on Earth, humans had learned that victory often went to those who fought the hardest, not those who had the most ships. "Remember," Park announced to his crew, "we are not here to win a fair fight. We are here to hurt them, so badly that they think twice about attacking another human world." The two fleets met in the space between New Incheon and its largest moon. Commander Vextar watched the human ships approach on his main screen. Their formation looked strange to his experienced eye. Instead of the tight defensive grouping used by most species, the humans were spread out in a loose pattern that made no tactical sense. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "the human vessels are not raising energy shields. Are they planning some kind of ramming attack?" Vextar studied the display more carefully. The human ships were accelerating to combat speed, but their defensive systems showed no activity. Either they were completely inexperienced in space warfare, or they had something else in mind. "All ships, prepare to engage," he ordered. "Fire when they enter effective range." The hegemony fleet opened fire first, sending streams of plasma energy toward the human formation. The deadly beams reached out across space, enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. They should have destroyed half the human fleet instantly. Instead, the plasma bolts passed harmlessly through empty space. The human ships were no longer where they had been. In the seconds it took for the energy weapons to travel from the hegemony ships to their targets, the humans had scattered like leaves in a storm wind. "What are they doing?" Kolneth asked in confusion. Before Vextar could answer, the human fleet opened fire. But instead of energy weapons, they launched solid projectiles at incredible speed. Chunks of metal accelerated by magnetic fields until they moved like bullets fired by gods. The kinetic rounds hit 3 hegemony cruisers before their crews could react. Energy shields that could stop plasma beams were useless against physical objects moving at such velocity. The metal projectiles punched through armor like it was paper, tearing massive holes in the enemy ships. "Return fire," Vextar shouted, but the humans had already moved again. Their ships danced through space in patterns that seemed random, but somehow kept them out of the path of hegemony weapons. Every few seconds they would stop long enough to launch another barrage of kinetic rounds, then scatter before return fire could reach them. Captain Park watched the battle unfold on his tactical screen. The human fleet was taking damage, but they were giving far worse than they received. 2 of his ships had been destroyed by lucky hits from hegemony plasma cannons, but the aliens had lost 6 vessels to human railgun fire. "Target their command ship," he ordered. "All vessels concentrate fire on the largest dreadnought." 21 human warships turned their weapons on Vextar's flagship. Hundreds of kinetic rounds struck the massive vessel in the span of 10 seconds. The hegemony ship's armor cracked and buckled under the assault. Atmosphere vented from dozens of hull breaches, but the flagship survived, its massive bulk absorbing punishment that would have destroyed smaller vessels. Vextar felt his ship shudder around him as damage reports flooded in from all sections. "Sir," his engineering officer reported, "we have lost 40% of our main armor. Hull breaches on decks 12 through 15. Casualties are heavy." Vextar gripped his command chair as another barrage shook his ship. The humans were not fighting like any enemy he had faced before. Most species used energy weapons in long-range duels, trading shots until one side's shields failed. These humans got in close and hit hard with weapons that ignored shields entirely. "All ships, fall back to long range," he ordered. "We need distance to use our superior firepower." But the humans did not let them withdraw easily. As the hegemony fleet tried to pull back, human ships pursued them, continuing their hit-and-run attacks. They fought like a pack of predators, striking wherever the enemy was weakest. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it finally ended, the hegemony fleet had been forced to retreat, leaving 8 destroyed ships behind. The humans had lost 5 vessels, but they had achieved something no other species had managed in 300 years of hegemony expansion. They had made Vextar's fleet run away. As the human ships regrouped around New Incheon, their crews began the grim task of collecting their dead and repairing battle damage. But there was something else happening that worried Commander Vextar as he watched from long-range sensors. The humans were not celebrating their victory. Instead, they were studying the wreckage of both fleets. learning from every piece of debris. They were analyzing hegemony weapons and armor, figuring out how to fight them more effectively next time. And there would be a next time. Vextar knew that with the certainty of a warrior who had finally met his match. The humans had not just won a battle. They had announced to the galaxy that they were not afraid to fight, even against impossible odds. More importantly, they had proven they were very good at it. In his private quarters that night, Vextar reviewed the battle recordings for the dozenth time. The human tactics made no sense according to standard military doctrine, but they worked with devastating effectiveness. The aliens had expected to fight a conventional space battle against an inferior enemy. Instead, they had encountered something entirely new. A species that approached warfare not as a game with rules, but as a problem to be solved through violence and determination. For the first time in his long military career, Commander Vextar began to wonder if the Hegemony Empire had finally found an enemy it could not defeat. Dr. Sun-Hee Choi stood in the research laboratory aboard Orbital Defense Station Gamma, watching her latest creation being loaded into launch tubes. The elderly scientist had spent 40 years studying weapons theory, but the alien invasion had given her work a terrible new purpose. Around her, younger researchers worked frantically to complete modifications to her designs. The space station hummed with activity as humanity's brightest minds focused on a single goal: finding new ways to kill their enemies. Dr. Choi called her assistant, a young man named Minho Park. The Admiral is requesting a status report on the EMP mine project. Sun-Hee activated the communication system, and Admiral Jin Wuhan's tired face appeared on the screen. The military leader had not slept properly in weeks, coordinating humanity's desperate defense across dozens of star systems. "Admiral," she began, "the electromagnetic pulse mines are ready for deployment, but I must warn you about their secondary effects." "Explain," Han replied curtly. Sun-Hee pulled up a holographic display showing her weapon's design. "The mines do not just disable enemy ships, Admiral. They trap the crews inside powerless vessels while broadcasting human radio transmissions. The aliens will hear our music, our news reports, our military communications about how we plan to destroy them." She paused, then continued. "Based on intercepted enemy communications, this psychological warfare is having unexpected results. The alien crews are becoming afraid of us." Admiral Han studied the display with interest. "How afraid?" "Some hegemony ships have refused direct combat orders. Their crews claim that humans fight like demons from their ancient mythology. They say we enjoy war in ways that civilized species cannot understand." The Admiral's expression grew grim. "Deploy the mines around all our remaining colonies. If fear is a weapon, then we will use it." Across the galaxy, hegemony fleet commanders were learning that humans did not fight according to any known rules of warfare. Every engagement brought new horrors that defied military logic and civilized conduct. Commander Vextar reviewed the latest battle reports in his private quarters. The documents painted a picture of an enemy that grew more dangerous with each encounter. Human ships now carried weapons that seemed designed specifically to cause maximum psychological damage to enemy crews. "Sir." Sub-Commander Kolnath entered nervously, carrying a datapad. "We have received reports from the 3rd Battle Group. They encountered human forces near the Kepler system." Vextar took the report and read it carefully. According to the surviving ships, the humans had used a new tactic. Instead of fighting in open space, they had hidden inside an asteroid field and waited for the hegemony fleet to pass by. Then they had launched hundreds of small craft that looked like mining equipment, but were actually bombs with pilots inside. The suicide attacks had destroyed 4 hegemony vessels and damaged 6 others. But more disturbing than the casualties were the recordings from the human pilots. As they flew their craft into the alien ships, they were singing war songs from their home world, broadcast on all frequencies for the enemy crews to hear. "They are not fighting to win territory or resources," Kolnath observed quietly. "They are fighting to terrify us." Vextar set down the report and walked to his viewport. Outside, the stars looked the same as they always had, but something fundamental had changed. The galaxy had become a more dangerous place, and it was humanity that had made it so. Send word to the fleet commanders, he ordered. All ships will travel in groups of no less than 10 vessels, no more single ship missions, and increase security patrols inside our own ships. Sir? Kolneth looked confused. The humans have begun boarding operations, Vextar explained grimly. They hide inside disabled ships and wait for rescue vessels to approach. Then they board our ships and sabotage them from within. The reports were almost too strange to believe. Human soldiers who somehow managed to infiltrate hegemony vessels despite having inferior technology and no knowledge of alien ship designs. They moved through enemy ships like ghosts, using improvised weapons and hacked systems to create chaos. Most disturbing of all, the human boarding parties never tried to capture ships. They only came aboard to destroy them. They would plant explosives, sabotage life support, or cause reactor overloads. Then they would disappear, leaving behind only destruction and fear. On the research station, Dr. Sun Hee Choi was working on her next project when the alarm sounded. Emergency lights bathed the laboratory in red, as the station's commander announced that a hegemony fleet had been detected approaching their position. All civilian personnel to evacuation pods, the voice said over the intercom. Military personnel, prepare for defense. But Sun Hee did not move toward the evacuation areas. Instead, she walked to her computer terminal and began entering commands. Around her, other researchers were doing the same thing. They had made a decision weeks ago when the war began. They would not run from their work. Dr. Choi, Minho called, out. The evacuation ships are ready to launch. We need to go now. She looked at the young man with sad eyes. Minho, I am 73 years old. I have lived my life and done my work, but you are young. You should go. I am not leaving without you, he replied firmly. Sun Hee smiled. It was the same determination she had seen in every human since the war began. The refusal to give up, even when the situation was hopeless. It was what made their species dangerous to their enemies and precious to each other. Then we will make our last stand here, she said. But we will not waste it. Help me activate the station's self-destruct system. When the hegemony fleet arrived at the research station, they expected to find a lightly defended facility filled with frightened civilians. Instead, they encountered a fortress bristling with improvised weapons. The humans had turned their scientific equipment into instruments of war. Particle accelerators became beam weapons. Chemical laboratories became bomb factories. Even the station's waste disposal system had been converted into a mass driver capable of launching projectiles at enemy ships. The battle lasted 6 hours. The research station was eventually destroyed, but it took 12 hegemony vessels with it. The final transmission from the station was Dr. Sun Hee Choi's voice, speaking calmly as explosions tore through her laboratory. This is Dr. Sun Hee Choi, of the Human Research Division. We died today, but our work continues. Every weapon we created, every tactic we developed, every bit of knowledge we gained about our enemies has been transmitted to Earth. We did not die in vain. We died to give humanity the tools it needs to survive. Remember us and make the aliens regret they ever heard the name human. The transmission ended as the station's fusion reactor overloaded, creating a brief new star in the darkness of space. Commander, Vexter watched the destruction from his flagship and felt something cold settle in his chest. The humans had turned a scientific research station into a military fortress and fought to the death rather than surrender. Their civilians were becoming soldiers. Their soldiers were becoming something that had no name in any civilized language. They were becoming something that the galaxy had never seen before. A species that viewed war not as politics by other means, but as the ultimate expression of their will to exist. And with each battle, they were getting better at it. In the depths of space, automated transmissions from the destroyed research station continued broadcasting on all frequencies. Technical specifications for new weapons, tactical analysis of hegemony ship vulnerabilities, video recordings of effective attack patterns. The humans were not just fighting the hegemony empire, they were teaching the entire galaxy how to fight them. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, other species were listening and learning. Major Hyunjae Moon crouched in the maintenance shaft of the hegemony dreadnought Eternal Conquest, her squad of 12 Marines moving silently behind her. The boarding operation should have been impossible. Human ships lacked the heavy assault. Craft needed to breach enemy capital ship defenses, so they had done something simpler. They had crashed a damaged frigate directly into the alien ship's hangar bay and walked aboard. "Remember the mission," Moon whispered into her comm unit. "We are not here to capture this ship. We are here to send a message to every hegemony crew in the galaxy." The Marines moved through the alien corridors like hunting wolves, using improvised explosives and hacked maintenance systems to create chaos. For weeks, they had studied every piece of debris from destroyed hegemony vessels. They had learned the aliens' weaknesses through careful observation and brutal experience. Behind them, emergency lights flashed as the dreadnought's automated systems tried to understand what was happening. Alien crew members ran back and forth shouting orders in their harsh language, but they were not prepared for enemies inside their own ship. Sergeant Kang Ho-yoon planted shaped charges on a power junction, while his teammate hacked into the environmental controls. Within minutes, sections of the massive ship began losing gravity and atmosphere. The hegemony crew found themselves fighting not just human invaders but their own vessel. "Major?" called Corporal So-jin Lee from her position near the communications array. "I have access to their internal communication system. Should I broadcast the message?" Moon nodded grimly. The message had been recorded by Admiral Han himself, specifically for situations like this. It was designed to be understood by any species in the galaxy. The Admiral's voice echoed through the dreadnought's communication system, speaking in perfect hegemony standard language. "Attention crew of the hegemony vessel, you are about to die. This is what happens when you attack human colonies. This is what happens when you threaten our families. Remember our faces as you die, because we are the last thing you will ever see." The psychological effect was immediate. Alien crew members who had never feared death in battle suddenly found themselves trapped inside their own ship, with enemies who seemed to appear from nowhere and disappear like ghosts. Commander Vextar received the emergency transmission from the Eternal Conquest with growing disbelief. The massive dreadnought was one of only 12 such vessels in the entire hegemony fleet. It carried 8,000 crew members and enough firepower to destroy a small planet. According to the frantic reports, 13 humans had somehow boarded the ship and were systematically destroying it from the inside. "Sir," his communication officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission from the human infiltrators. They want to speak with you." The main screen activated to show a human female in combat armor. Her face was streaked with alien blood, and her eyes held the cold light of a predator. Behind her, Vextar could see hegemony crew members lying motionless on the floor. "Commander Vextar," she said calmly, "I am Major Hyunjae Moon of the Human Marine Corps. I wanted you to watch what happens next." The camera view switched to show the dreadnought's reactor core. Around it, the human Marines had placed enough explosives to crack the ship's spine. They stood calmly at their positions, waiting for orders. "You have 60 seconds to evacuate your people," Moon continued. "This is your only warning. After that, we detonate the charges, and your flagship becomes a memorial to human determination." Vextar stared at the screen in shock. "You will die, too," he said. The human major smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression he had ever seen. "Yes, we will. That is what makes us different from you. We are willing to trade our lives to hurt our enemies. The question is, are you willing to trade 8,000 of your people for 13 of ours?" The countdown began. Vextar watched his tactical display as escape pods launched frantically from the doomed dreadnought. His crew had less than a minute to abandon the ship that had been their home for decades. 50 seconds, Major Moon announced calmly. "All hands abandon ship," Vextar shouted into his communication system. "This is not a drill. Evacuate immediately." The next 40 seconds passed like hours. Vextar watched from his own ship as thousands of escape pods fled from the Eternal Conquest. But he knew that many crew members would not make it out in time. 10 seconds. Moon's voice echoed across the communication channel. Vextar found himself holding his breath as the final seconds ticked away. At exactly 0, the human major looked directly into the camera and spoke her final words. Tell the Yao Galaxy what you saw here today. Tell them that humans keep their promises. Tell them that we are not afraid to die if it means our enemies will fear us. The Eternal Conquest exploded in a ball of superheated plasma that could be seen from 3 star systems away. The most powerful warship in the Hegemony fleet was gone, destroyed by 13 humans who had sacrificed themselves to send a message to the galaxy. In the aftermath of the explosion, Vextar sat in his command chair and tried to process what he had witnessed. The humans had lost 13 lives to destroy a ship carrying 8,000 crew members. By any measure of military mathematics, it was an acceptable trade, but the psychological impact was devastating. Every Hegemony crew member in the fleet now knew that humans could appear anywhere, anytime, and they were willing to die to complete their missions. Sir, Kolneth approached hesitantly. The other fleet commanders are requesting new orders. Some of them are asking for permission to withdraw to home system defenses. Vextar looked at his subordinate with tired eyes. In all his years of military service, he had never seen his own people afraid. The Hegemony Empire had conquered half the galaxy through superior technology and overwhelming force. Their crews were disciplined professionals who followed orders, without question. But the humans had introduced something new to galactic warfare, the certainty that any engagement might end in mutual annihilation. They fought like cornered animals, willing to destroy themselves if it meant taking their enemies with them. Send word to the High Command, Vextar ordered finally. Request immediate reinforcements. Double our patrol schedules and increase internal security on all vessels. Sir, Kolneth asked quietly, do you think the humans can be defeated? Vextar was quiet for a long moment, staring at the debris field where his flagship had been. Finally, he spoke in a voice that carried the weight of 3 centuries of military experience. I do not know. They have shown us something that no enemy has ever shown us before. They have shown us that they would rather die fighting than live as slaves. And they have shown us that they are very, very good at killing. He paused, then continued. What worries me most is that they are learning from every engagement. Every battle teaches them something new about how to hurt us. They study our weaknesses and exploit them with deadly efficiency. In the depths of space, automated beacons left behind by the human boarding party continued broadcasting on all frequencies. Technical specifications for Hegemony ship vulnerabilities, video recordings of successful infiltration techniques, detailed analysis of alien crew psychology under stress. The humans were not just fighting a war. They were conducting a systematic study of their enemies, learning how to defeat them through careful observation and ruthless experimentation. And with each victory, each successful mission, each enemy ship destroyed, they were becoming something that the galaxy had never seen before. A species that viewed war not as a last resort, but as a science to be perfected. Commander Vextar knew, with the certainty of a warrior who had finally met his match, that the galaxy would never be the same again. The humans had introduced a new kind of warfare, one based not on honor or glory, but on cold calculation and absolute commitment. They had shown that they were not just another young species struggling for survival. They were apex predators who had finally found their hunting ground among the stars. The war room aboard the Confederation flagship Liberator buzzed with activity as intelligence officers analyzed battle footage from the human hegemony conflict. Fleet Admiral Zex Kara, a tall insectoid with compound eyes that missed nothing, studied the tactical displays with growing fascination. For months, the Confederation had watched the war between humanity and the Hegemony Empire with detached interest. Most galactic powers viewed it as a minor conflict between an established empire and an upstart species. The humans would be crushed quickly, and life would continue as normal. But the war was not going according to anyone's expectations. Show me the engagement at Proxima Station again. Admiral Zex Kara clicked to her aide, Commander Veltoth. The holographic display showed what should have been a simple operation. A single human research station, lightly defended, facing a hegemony battle group of 30 vessels. Every military analyst in the galaxy had predicted total destruction within hours. Instead, the humans had done something that defied all military logic. They had turned their research station into a fortress and convinced the civilian population to stay and fight rather than evacuate. Watch this section carefully. Veltoth highlighted part of the recording. The humans launch everything they have. Cargo shuttles filled with explosives, maintenance pods converted to ramming craft, even individual humans in spacesuits carrying demolition charges. Zexkara studied the footage intently. The human defenders had no chance of survival, but they fought as if victory was possible. They used mining equipment as weapons, turned scientific instruments into bomb delivery systems, and converted every piece of technology on the station into something designed to kill enemies. The casualty ratio was devastating in the hegemony's favor, but they had lost 6 ships to what should have been a defenseless target. More importantly, they had lost something harder to replace: the confidence of their crews. The humans are not fighting a conventional war, observed Veltoth. They appear to view every engagement as total war, with no distinction between military and civilian targets on their own side. More than that, Zexkara replied thoughtfully. They are fighting like a species that believes extinction is the only alternative to victory. Look at their tactical patterns. No retreat, no surrender, no quarter given or asked for. Around the war room, intelligence analysts compiled reports that painted a disturbing picture. Humans did not just accept casualties in the normal military sense. They weaponized their own deaths, designing their ships and equipment to cause maximum damage when destroyed. Their soldiers carried explosives powerful enough to take enemies with them if they were killed. Their civilians had proven willing to die rather than submit to occupation. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be getting better at warfare with each engagement. "Admiral," called the communication officer, "we are receiving a priority transmission from Neutral Station Omega. The Galactic Council is calling an emergency session to discuss the human conflict." Zexkara set down the tactical reports and considered the implications. The Galactic Council had not called an emergency session in over 200 years. The last time was during the Void War, when an unknown species had threatened to destroy entire star systems. "Prepare my ship for immediate departure," she ordered, "and compile all our intelligence on human military capabilities. I suspect the Council will want detailed answers about what we are witnessing." 3 days later, representatives from dozens of species gathered in the Great Chamber of Neutral Station Omega. The massive space station served as neutral ground for diplomatic meetings between the galaxy's major powers. Today the atmosphere was tense with worry and uncertainty. Ambassador Young Mi Kang sat at the newly installed human delegation table, her expression calm, despite representing a species that had become the subject of fearful whispers across 3 sectors. Beside her, General Wu Jin Seo maintained the controlled demeanor that had served him well during the preliminary negotiations. The humans had been invited to the emergency session not as a conquered species begging for mercy, but as a recognized power whose actions were reshaping galactic politics. "The session will come to order," announced Mediator Prime Hexaloth, his tentacles writhing with nervous energy. "We are here to discuss the ongoing conflict between the Hegemony Empire and the species known as humanity." What followed was not the expected discussion about ending the war, but something far more unsettling. Intelligence reports from multiple sources painted a picture of humans as something the galaxy had never encountered, a species that approached warfare as an existential imperative. "The human response to the hegemony invasion has exceeded all projections," reported the Altarian delegate, his crystalline form shimmering with agitation. "Their industrial capacity has been converted entirely to war production. Their entire population appears to be participating in the military effort." Representative Krixtal of the Saurian Empire added his own observations. "Our intelligence suggests that human military doctrine makes no distinction between combatants and non-combatants on their own side. Every human colony has become a fortress. Every civilian has become a potential soldier." Ambassador Kang listened to the reports without expression, but General Seo leaned forward slightly when the discussion turned to human tactical innovations. The humans have introduced weapons and tactics that violate several established conventions of civilized warfare, stated the hegemony representative, his scales pale with stress. They use kinetic weapons that ignore energy shields. They employ psychological warfare designed to terrorize enemy crews. Most concerning, they have shown a willingness to sacrifice entire populations to inflict casualties on their enemies. Conventions that were established without consulting us, General, Seo replied calmly. Humanity was not part of the galactic community when these rules were written. We are not bound by agreements we never signed. The silence that followed was profound. Every delegate in the chamber understood the implications of that simple statement. The humans were not just fighting differently, they were rejecting the entire framework of civilized galactic warfare. Admiral Zexkara activated her delegation's display system, showing tactical analysis from recent battles. The human military appears to be learning and adapting at an unprecedented rate. Each engagement provides them with new intelligence about their enemy's weaknesses. She highlighted specific examples from the battle recordings. They studied debris, from destroyed ships to understand alien technology. They analyze enemy communication patterns to predict tactical responses. They have turned warfare into a science, treating each battle as an experiment designed to improve their effectiveness. More disturbing, added Commander Veltoth, their tactics are spreading to other species. We have received reports of rebel groups adopting human-style suicide attacks and psychological warfare techniques. The chamber erupted in worried chittering and clicking as delegates realized the broader implications. The humans were not just fighting the hegemony empire. They were teaching the galaxy new ways to wage war, and those lessons were being learned by species across multiple sectors. Ambassador Kang stood slowly, her movement drawing the attention of every delegate in the chamber. When she spoke, her voice carried easily through the vast space. "Honored representatives," she began, "you speak of our warfare as if it were something alien and incomprehensible. But from our perspective, we are simply doing what any species would do when faced with extinction." She activated the human delegation's holographic display, showing images of destroyed colonies and civilian casualties. The hegemony empire came to our worlds uninvited and began killing our people. They demanded that we abandon our homes or be destroyed. They gave us a choice between slavery and death. We chose a third option, resistance. The images shifted to show human military formations and weapon systems. Every innovation you fear, every tactic you condemn, exists for one purpose, to ensure that humanity survives. We did not ask for this war, but we will finish it on our terms. General Seo stood beside her, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent his life studying the art of war. The galaxy appears surprised that humans fight to win rather than fight to follow rules. This surprises us as well. How has your civilization survived so long while handicapping yourselves with arbitrary limitations on effective combat? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Around the chamber, delegates who had witnessed centuries of carefully regulated conflicts began to consider the uncomfortable possibility that humanity's approach to warfare might be more natural than their own civilized conventions. Mediator, Prime Hexloth restored order to the session, but the damage had been done. The humans had not come to the Galactic Council as supplicants begging for peace. They had come as a power announcing their arrival on the galactic stage, and their message was simple. The rules of the game had changed whether the other players liked it or not. 6 months after the first hegemony assault on human colonies, the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The Great Conference Hall of Neutral Station Omega hosted an emergency session of the Galactic Council where representatives from dozens of species had gathered to address what everyone now called the human situation. The war was over, but not in the way anyone had expected. Commander Vextar sat in the observer section, no longer wearing the insignia of active military command. His career had ended with the destruction of his flagship, but more than that, his understanding of warfare had been shattered by creatures who fought like nothing he had ever encountered. Below him, Ambassador Young-Mi Kang and General Wu-Jin Seo sat at the human delegation table. They were no longer representing a minor species begging for recognition. They spoke for the newest and most feared military power in the galaxy. The Hegemony Empire formally requests a permanent ceasefire, announced Mediator Prime Hexaloth, his voice carrying undertones of exhaustion. The human delegation has agreed to consider terms, but the session that followed was not about ending a war. It was about restructuring the entire galactic balance of power. The humans had not simply survived the hegemony's assault. They had turned it into a demonstration of what happened to species that threatened human survival. We appreciate the hegemony's desire for peace, Ambassador Kang said, her calm voice filling the vast chamber. However, we must address the larger issue that this conflict has revealed. The galaxy appears to be filled with civilizations that view genocide as an acceptable opening move in diplomacy. General Seo activated the holographic display system, showing the current military situation across multiple star systems. Human fleets, larger and more advanced than anyone had thought possible, were positioned near the homeworlds of every species that had voted to support the original hegemony assault. We have learned an important lesson during this conflict, Seo continued with military precision. The only way to ensure humanity's survival is to demonstrate that attacking us carries consequences that extend far beyond immediate tactical considerations. The display showed detailed intelligence on 12 different star systems. Each one belonged to a species that had supported the hegemony's decision to invade human space. Each one now faced the possibility of human retaliation. We are no longer fighting for our colonies, the general explained. We are fighting to establish a new principle in galactic relations. No species will ever again view humanity as acceptable prey. Around the chamber, delegates shifted nervously in their seats. The war they had expected to observe as a minor conflict between an empire and primitives had become something that threatened the fundamental assumptions of galactic civilization. Admiral Zexkara of the Confederation studied the tactical displays with professional interest. The human military buildup was staggering in scope and sophistication. Earth's industrial capacity had been converted entirely to war production, churning out vessels designed not for exploration or trade, but for one purpose: projecting force across interstellar distances. Ambassador Kang, she called out, surely humanity does not intend to make war on half the galaxy over a single vote in this council. The human ambassador turned to face her, and her smile was as cold as empty space. Admiral, humanity intends to make it clear that supporting our enemies has consequences. We believe in very simple principles. Those who help our friends will be helped in return. Those who help our enemies will learn why that was a mistake. Representative Krixtal of the Saurian Empire rose from his delegation table, his reptilian features showing obvious agitation. You speak of consequences as if you have the power to threaten established galactic powers. Your species has been in space for barely 2 centuries. General Seo looked at the Saurian delegate with the expression of a teacher addressing a slow student. Representative Krixtal, your species voted to support the hegemony invasion. 3 days ago, a human fleet arrived in your home system. They are currently in orbit around your capital world, waiting for orders. The silence that followed was absolute. Every delegate in the chamber understood what they were hearing. The humans had not just survived their first galactic war, they had used it as cover to position military forces throughout local space. This is impossible, Krixtal protested. Our home system has the most advanced planetary defenses in the sector. No foreign fleet could penetrate our security grid. Your security grid was designed to stop conventional attacks, Seo replied calmly. Our ships do not attack conventionally. They approached your world disguised as merchant vessels, refugee transports, and scientific expeditions. Your own traffic control systems guided them to their current positions. He activated another section of the display, showing real-time footage from orbit around the Saurian homeworld. Dozens of human warships hung in space above the planet's major cities, their weapons trained downward. We could have destroyed your world 3 days ago, Seo continued. Instead, we chose to demonstrate that we have the capability to strike anywhere, anytime without warning. This is not a threat. It is a statement of fact. Commander Vextar watched the proceedings with a mixture of horror and admiration. The humans had done something that no military strategist in the galaxy had thought possible. They had fought a defensive war while simultaneously positioning themselves for offensive operations across multiple sectors. More importantly, they had done it without anyone noticing until it was too late. The question before this council, Ambassador Kang continued, is whether the galaxy wishes to continue operating under the old system, where might makes right and genocide is considered acceptable diplomacy, or whether we will establish new principles based on mutual respect and defensive cooperation. She gestured to the tactical displays showing human fleet positions. We are prepared to enforce either system. The choice is yours. Mediator Prime Hexloth attempted to restore some semblance of normal diplomatic procedure. Ambassador, surely you cannot expect the entire galactic community to restructure itself based on the demands of a single species. We are not making demands, General Seo replied. We are offering a choice. Species that wish to live in peace with humanity will find us valuable allies. We will share our technology, protect their trade routes, and defend them against aggression. He paused, letting the implications sink in before continuing. Species that prefer the old system where the strong prey upon the weak will discover that humanity is very good at that game as well. Better than most, as recent events have demonstrated. The chamber erupted in agitated discussion as delegates realized they were witnessing the emergence of a new galactic superpower. The humans had not simply won a war, they had used their victory to position themselves as the arbiters of galactic security. Admiral Zexkara studied the human delegates with growing respect. You planned this from the beginning, she observed. The defensive war was cover for offensive positioning. Ambassador Kang nodded slightly. Admiral, we learned long ago that the best defense is often a good offense. The hegemony attacked us because they thought we were weak and isolated. We have ensured that no one will make that mistake again. But more than that, General Seo added, we have demonstrated that humanity approaches warfare differently than other species. We do not fight for territory or resources or glory. We fight to survive, and we fight to win. Around the chamber, delegates began to understand the new reality. The galaxy's military balance had shifted permanently. The humans had introduced a new kind of warfare, based not on conventional tactics or superior technology, but on absolute commitment and strategic thinking that operated on timescales other species could not match. Representative Krickstall, his earlier confidence completely shattered, asked the question that everyone was thinking. What do you want from us? Ambassador Kang stood slowly, her movement commanding the attention of every being in the chamber. We want what every species wants, the right to exist without fear, the right to raise our children on our worlds without worrying about invasion, the right to trade and explore and grow without constantly looking over our shoulders for predators. She paused, then continued in a voice that carried the weight of 8 billion humans behind it. We have learned that in this galaxy, those rights must be earned through strength. So we have become strong. The question now is whether other species will choose to join us in building a galaxy where strength protects the weak, or whether they will continue to live in a galaxy where strength devours the weak. The session continued for hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. One by one, the galactic powers agreed to the new framework that humanity proposed, not because they loved the humans or trusted them, but because they had seen what happened to those who opposed them. The hegemony empire, once the dominant military force in local space, signed a treaty that reduced their fleet to defensive forces only. The species that had supported their invasion found themselves paying reparations to rebuild the human colonies they had helped destroy. Most importantly, the galaxy accepted new laws of warfare that reflected human values. No more surprise invasions. No more genocide as acceptable diplomacy. No more predation of the weak by the strong. Commander Vextar left the station that day knowing that his understanding of warfare